Hi, I'm Stacy, and today we are going to learn all about knitting socks. We are going to learn from the top down today, and we're going to learn ribbing and legs and heel and foot and toe, and you should have a complete pair of socks by the end. The pattern we're going to use is the Go Your Own Way socks. It's a free pattern on Knit Picks. The yarn we are going to use is Hawthorn, and this is the colorway Wisp. You should be able to get two socks, a pair of socks, out of one skein. If you have larger feet, you might want to get an additional skein. We are going to learn today on DPNs, or double pointed needles. The pattern also includes instructions for 2 circulars and for magic loop, but we're going to stick with DPNs for this class. And let's get started. Hi, all right, so let's get started. First thing you want to do is take your skein of yarn and put it into a yarn cake, or with your ball winder and Swift, or you can roll it up by hand if you don't have those. You want to get your needles. I generally knit on 4 double pointed needles, so we'll go ahead and do it that way. Some people prefer 5. And then we're going to do the long tail cast on to get started. So you're going to pull out enough yarn for about 3 to 4 times the width of your sock. So we'll go ahead and do that. You just want to make sure you have enough yarn to complete the cast on. So we'll do a slip knot. So I have the yarn coming from the cake. I'm going to put it around my thumb, the yarn tail around my index finger. We're going to take the point of the needle, go under the yarn by your thumb, reach over and go over the yarn by your finger. And that's the long tail cast on. And we will cast on 44 stitches, and we'll see you back here for the ribbing. Okay, we got them all cast on, and now we're going to distribute them over your other DPNs. So there's different methods. You can either use a total of 4 DPNs, or you can use 5. I prefer 4, so we're going to do that. And in the pattern, it suggests to distribute keep the heel stitches on one needle, and then divide the instep stitches on another. So divided by 4, be 11, 11, and 22. So we're just gonna slide them on over. One thing to keep in mind, if you've never used double pointed needles before, you're really only using 2 needles at a time. The other 2 or 3 double pointed needles are just holding the other stitches. So you're just going to be working around and around. And they're usually pretty good about staying on your needles, but it's one thing to be careful about is to make sure your stitches don't fall off. Okay, we have distributed all of our stitches, and now we are going to go ahead and start knitting in the round. Biggest thing to remember is to make sure that all of your stitches are facing in one direction, because you do not want to twist your stitches for this particular pattern. So just make sure they're all facing the same way. And we are going to, the first row of this pattern is knit 1, purl 1, and we are going to start with that. So you're just going to go ahead, and just like if you're knitting on 2 regular needles, you're just going to start your pattern. It's going to be a 1 by 1 rib for 1 inch, which means you're going to knit 1 and purl 1. So you're going to knit And then the next stitch will be a purl. And this is called ribbing. And this will keep your socks from falling down. So knit one, and then purl one. And you're going to continue like that across the needle. And then you're just going to move on to the next needle doing the same exact thing. Okay, so we are going to continue with for ribbing for 1 inch, and then we're going to switch to stocking net stitch in the round, which is just knit every single stitch, and that's going to go on until your piece equals 5.5 inches. And we'll meet back here and start on those heels. All right, so now we have knit our 5.5 inches of ribbing and stocking net stitch, and now we're going to switch to the heel. First thing we're going to do is the heel flap. This is the part that is going to go up against your heel on your foot. You're actually going to work on those 22 stitches that are on the 22 stitches needle. We're going to actually work back and forth, so we're not going to work in around. We're just going to work on these 22 stitches. So, and it's just like knitting regular. You're just going. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to slip one, and then you're just going to knit across the row, all the way to the end, and then you're just going to turn rather than go on to the next needle. You're going to slip these stitches because we're going to pick them up at a later point, and it'll be much easier to pick them up if you have slip stitches already. And that'll make much more sense when we get to that point. All right, so we got to the end, and now we're just going to turn it, and you'll see that those purl stitches are just facing you. And just kind of keep the other two double point needles out of the way while you're working. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to slip one, and then you're going to purl one, and then you're going to slip one and purl one. Slip and purl. And these slip stitches actually that go across the row, this actually makes your heel a little bit stronger rather than regular stocking net stitch. You can do heels in stocking net stitch, but I found that this keeps it, you won't get as many holes because it creates a denser fabric. And you're just going to do that all the way across. And then you're just going to repeat those 2 rows for 10 more times, or how many times it says in your pattern. For the small one, we are going to do it 10 more times, so we'll have 11 slip stitches on the side of your heel. And then we'll be back here and work on the gusset. All right, now we're going to do the most fun part, I think, of the sock. We're going to turn the heel. So you'll see those that heel flap you just made. Got a nice little square here. And you'll see along the side there'll be as many as it says in the pattern for this particular size is 11 stitches slipped up the side. Not going to worry about that right now though. So first row, you are going to slip one, and then you're going to knit as many as it says in the pattern. For the size, it's going to be 12. So knit in 12, just across. And this is where the magic happens. So we're going to slip the first stitch as to knit, slip the second stitch as to knit, and then we're going to knit those two together. And then we're going to knit one more stitch. And you'll see that you still have a few stitches over on this side. That's okay. We're going to turn the work. And we're going to work back, just right from that middle of the row. So you're going to slip one, and then purl as many as it says in the pattern, which for us it is 5. So purling 5 more stitches. Then you're going to purl 2 together, just like you would purl any stitches. And then purl 1 more. And you should have the same amount of extra stitches on this needle as you did on the other side when you turned it. Each time you turn, you're going to see like this little gap in between the stitches you just worked and the stitches you left on the needle. So we're going to work back to 1 stitch before that gap. And then you're going to slip the stitch before the gap, and then the one after it, you're going to slip as to knit. Knit both those stitches together. Then you're going to knit 1 and turn the work. You're going to do pretty much the similar thing on the other side. You're going to slip 1 as to purl, and then you're going to purl all the way across to 1 stitch before that gap. And then you're going to purl the stitch before the gap and the stitch after the gap together. And then you're going to purl 1 more. All right, and then you're going to continue those two steps until all your stitches have been worked. And then after you've worked all those stitches, we'll come back and we will learn about the gusset. All right, so now we have finished with our heel turn, and you'll look at it and you'll see how we have that nice little flat area. That's going to be on the bottom of your heel. Also, at this time, this will be a good time to move your instep stitches onto 1 needle. Those are those extra stitches we had hanging out on those 2 extra double pointed needles. Those 2 11 stitches. Now there's 22 stitches on 1 needle. It just makes it easier as you're working along. So first thing we're going to do to start the gusset is we're going to go ahead and knit across those heel stitches. For the smallest size, I have 14 of them, but depending on what size you're making, you may have more. So we're going to knit all the way to the end. And then once we get to the end, you should see along your heel flap, you should see 11 slip stitches. So we're going to go ahead and pick up and knit those 11 slip stitches across the side. You're going to poke them through that slip stitch, wrap around and pull it through. And you're going to do that for those 11 stitches. Poke it through, wrap it around, pull it through. all the way down. And once you get to the last one, there's going to be a gap between, you'll see kind of a large gap between the last slip stitch and the next stitch you're going to work. And we kind of want to take care of that, otherwise you're going to have holes in your socks. So what I usually do is I just go ahead and look for a good place to pick up 2 extra stitches. You're just going to poke your needle through an area that looks like it could use an extra stitch. And then we're going to go ahead and work across those instep stitches. So this is actually going to be the top of your foot, in case you're wondering how this all is constructed. And you'll have 22 across there. You'll pretty much leave these, these will pretty much stay at 22 stitches until you get to the end, to the toe. All right, so we have reached the last couple stitches, so, all right. And it's the same thing over here. You'll see between those slip stitches and the last stitch you worked, you will see that there is a gap there. And you want to make sure that there's no gap there because you don't want holes in your socks, because those aren't fun. So just go ahead and pick up a couple of stitches, extra stitches, where you feel like it should be. So that's how I'm picking mine up. And then go ahead and you're going to pick up and knit the slip stitches on the other side of the heel. And there should be 11 there as well. All the way up. And then once you get to the top, you want to divide your heel stitches so they're even between your 2 heel stitch needles, kind of like we had on the instep. So I'm going to get to the top. And then we're going to just, might be a little fussy, but you're going to go ahead and work across half of those heel original heel stitches. So in this case, there were 7 for us. You will have your heel stitches on 2 needles, and your instep, or the top of your foot, is going to be on 1 needle. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just continue and knit across those, the heel stitches you had already picked up. We want to start the row on the other side. So now we've worked across those the heel stitches and the instep stitches, and now that we finished the instep stitches, this is going to be the new start of our row, which is the first heel stitch needle. So to decrease the gusset, because we want to get back down to what the amount we started with when we started the sock. So you're going to knit 1, and then we're going to do an SSK. So slip as to knit, slip, and then knit the 2 together. And then we're going to continue all the way to the other end, to the last 3 stitches of the heel. So I'm going to go work all of these heel stitches. Okay, so now we are at the last 3 stitches. So we're just going to knit those 2 together, or knit the next 2 together, and then knit 1. And that's our decrease row. The next row is going to be just a plain stocking knit row, which is knit all stitches. And then we're going to repeat that decrease row again. We're going to repeat those 2 rows until you have the original number you cast on with. In this case, it would be 44. So this will stay 22 stitches, and then these will be decreased down to 11 stitches each. We'll go ahead and work on the foot. You're going to just work in plain stocking knit once you finish all of those decreases until your foot length is 2 to 2.5 inches less than your foot length, your total foot length. So you just want to take a measure of your foot, and then if it's 7 inches, you're just going to knit for 5 inches. So, And then we'll meet back here and start decreasing for the toes. Okay, now we've got our foot all done. You'll see we have the top of the foot is 22 stitches, and then we've got the bottom of the foot is going to be 2 sets of 11 stitches. So we got 44 stitches here. Your numbers will be a little bit different if you're doing a different size. So now we're going to start decreasing for the toe. So this is similar to the way we decreased up back up here for the gusset. We're going to knit 1, then SSK, and then we're going to knit around to the last 3 stitches of the heels. Okay, we've reached the last 2 or 3 stitches of the heel stitches. So what we're going to do is knit the next 2 stitches together and then knit the final stitch. And then we're going to switch over to the instep stitches, where we're going to repeat what we just did. So we're going to knit 1, and then we're going to do another SSK, just like we did before. And then knit to the last 3 stitches. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to knit 2 together and then knit 1. And this is called our decrease round. So you're going to and then the next round you're going to do is just a plain knit round. And we're going to repeat those 2 rounds until you have 8 stitches if you're doing the small size, or check your pattern to see what you need to do. And we'll meet back here and we'll learn about the Kitchener stitch. Okay, we've reached the end of our toe. We now have 8 stitches total on our sock. We have 4 on the instep and then 4 on the heel. We're going to go ahead and slide 2 of those heel stitches over so we can get them on just 2 needles. So, and now we have 8 stitches, 4 parallel stitches. So we're going to do our Kitchener stitch now. We're going to take our darning needle. We're going to cut the working yarn. Give it about 6 to 8 inches, just so you have room to weave it in as well as sew it up. And go ahead and thread that. And now we're going to do the Kitchener stitch. The 2 needles, we're going to hold them parallel. And you're going to take your needle and you're going to insert it as if to knit. And then we're going to just slide that off. You're going to go into the second one, the second stitch on that first needle as if to purl. We're going to leave that one on. And then the first stitch on the other needle, farthest away from you, we're going to insert as if to purl and pull that through and slide that off. And then we're going to, in the next stitch on that needle, we're going to insert the as if to knit. And then we're going to leave that on. Next, we're going to move back to that first needle. We're going to insert the sewing needle as if to knit. We're going to slide that stitch off. Then we're going to, on the next stitch on that needle, we're going to insert the needle as if to purl and leave that on. Then we're going to go back to that second needle and insert as if to purl. and slide that off. We're going to do these until you get to the end. That first needle, we're going to insert the sewing needle as if to knit. Pull out that needle. Insert the needle as if to purl and close it up. And we're going to just work in those ends just like you would like any other normal piece of knitting. Usually I turn them inside out and work it in. And then you want to go back up. Go ahead and work in that first yarn tail from the cast on. And any other yarn tails you may have, you probably won't have any. That's the nice thing about socks. You usually don't have many tails to weave in. And then once it's complete, you have a nice pair of socks.